for 30, presented by Buick Encore.
Free Spirits is a story about one of pro basketball's most colorful and controversial teams, the Spirits of St. Louis. The Spirit story plays out like a classic movie. There are good guys and bad guys, shocking twists and surprising turns, and in the end, a high-priced business deal goes bad. But it isn't over. The final chapter has yet to be written.
Just past the top of the hour, and welcome back to AM 770, your double shot sports talk in the morning. Did you see in the paper where the NBA is being sued by the owners of the Spirits of St. Louis? One of the two ABA teams that got left out in the cold when the leagues merged back in 1976. The owners of the Spirits have filed suit asking for hundreds of millions of dollars that they believe the league owes them.
See, I gotta give you young guys a history lesson. So you don't know nothing.
Give us a history.
You don't know nothing about the ABA. I gotta give you a history lesson. When I was playing in the ABA, I was one of the 5 best players in the ABA.
Marvin picks it up and stuffs it. Back to Marvin. Good play. Super Marvin Barnes. One-hand jump up and in.
When I played with the Spirits, I always got double teamed. Nobody could stop me from scoring.
Barnes tries the lane himself and lays it up and in.
I played like a mercenary, like an assassin.
Like the Black Mamba?
Like the Black Mamba, baby. Yes, sir.
Marvin, a jumper over Paul. Yeah! So Marvin lays it up and good it comes.
You know what? They had an article in this magazine called Slam. And the title of the article was "The First Negro with an Attitude."
Who was that?
That's me, baby.
Marvin Barnes was the player we wanted, and he's going to be in St. Louis for a long time.
Marvin Barnes and the Spirits of St. Louis existed for only 2 short years, but during that time, they transformed both pro basketball and the business of pro sports.
The Spirits are the NBA's 31st team. Because of that incredible TV rights deal and the notorious escapades of Marvin Barnes, I think the Spirits may be more relevant today than when the ABA folded 40 years ago.
If you want to take a single franchise that captured everything, just about everything, that was crazy about the ABA, look no further than the Spirits of St. Louis.
Good evening. I shall resign the presidency effective at noon tomorrow.
It was quite an era in the early 70s. I mean, we were just coming out of a period of time with segregation in the 60s. People were expressing themselves more openly. You saw the afros, you saw the sideburns.
Bell bottoms, stack heel shoes, plaid pants, plaid coat. And the 70s was wild, you know, like the flower child.
This big revolution was going on, you know, the hippie era, the marijuana era, all that stuff was in play.
The 70s are a carryover of the 60s. Everybody was trying to do their own thing. So this expression also drifted over to sports.
Compared to the NBA, the ABA was fabulous.
The ABA was a free-spirited organization that we had made the game become a faster game. We played above the rim, which the NBA wasn't doing at the time.
Whoever came up with the concept of the three-point line and the red, white, and blue of basketball, ingenious.
The ABA certainly was jazz compared to the NBA symphony. In fact, the ABA probably was early rap music. We just didn't know what it was.
The league was in the entertainment business, and the question became, if you owned a franchise, what is it that we can do to make our game more exciting?
Back then, the ABA was viewed by people in the NBA that red, white, and blue ball belongs in the nose of a seal.
In other news, expansion is on the agenda as the ABA comes into town for its annual...
The ABA is a place where guys with a lot of ego and a lot of ambition and just some money could get into the game.
Dan and Ozzie Silna and their attorney, a guy by the name of Don Shupek, bought the Carolina franchise and moved it to St. Louis.
The Spirit's owners, who were high-spirited, no pun intended, had made some money in the clothing industry, and they really wanted to be part of the NBA.
They came into the ABA under the premise that there would be a merger with the NBA and that they would be a part of it.
The Silners were basketball nuts or aficionados. These were guys thirsting to show what two sharp guys from New Jersey could do to shake up this league and really have a winner.
The Spirits now have under contract 4 first-round draft choices.
There was a general manager named Harry Weltman that they hired who had long been wanting to get into basketball. He was able to hook up with the Silnas, and then he went out looking for players, looking for coaches.
Part of the professional process is picking talent. And you've either got to have an eye for it or you don't. Harry had an eye for talent.
I'm very happy to announce that beginning next year, Marvin Barnes will be wearing the uniform of the Spirits of St. Louis.
This was a big signing. I mean, Marvin coming out of Providence, I think that the NBA thought for sure we got Marvin Barnes coming our way. And he ended up in the ABA.
Marvin led the country in rebounding as a senior at Providence and averaged double figures. He was a tremendous talent. He was drafted second in the NBA draft behind only Bill Walton.
They wanted that marquee player, and they wanted Marvin to be the next Julius Erving.
When Marvin wanted to play, he could play. At Central High School, he was all-state. But there were a few critics. I mean, he was thrown out for cursing the refs, kicking the ball, sucker punching opponents. His own teammate coined the nickname Bad News. Marvin didn't like the nickname, but as he says, it sure as hell stuck.
And then on the Providence team, he was accused of hitting one of his teammates with a tire iron. You don't really hate stories involving tire irons and teammates. They usually don't come out well.
They offered him $2.2 million. It was a 7-year deal, but the salary was going to be spread over 14 years. So in reality, he was going to be making $150,000 a year.
It was a mutual relationship. I needed them, they needed me. And I'm looking forward to being here.
I suspect that the ABA was giving a 10% kickback to agents that steered the top players to their league over the NBA.
The big thing the ABA did that sent the whole pro basketball world upside down was bringing in, it started with Spencer Haywood and then others, underclassmen into the league. Then, of course, you have Moses Malone coming out of high school, and it just created chaos.
We want to include Gus Gerard, who came out of school after his junior year, who certainly would have been a first-round draft choice.
They drafted me as an undergraduate. And so I flew up to New York, and I'm sitting there, and they're negotiating things, and all of a sudden they come out with a contract for me of $950,000 guaranteed and a $75,000 check in my pocket, signing bonus to leave Virginia at that time. We had the only starting rookie front line in the history of pro basketball. It was Marvin, myself, and Maurice Lucas.
I want to announce that the Spirits of St. Louis have signed Maurice Lucas.
Maurice Lucas always been the enforcer. You know, pound for pound, Maurice was the beast. I mean, I remember he used to pop his shirt and tell people he want some of this. You know, Maurice was a monster. Give you 20 and 20 every night.
A player I wanted to sign from the day we brought this franchise into St. Louis, and that's James Williams.
Five Williams was a playground legend in Brooklyn. He was fantastic offensive threat. Five was a warrior, he was a soldier, he was a gladiator.
There was not a lot of thought to chemistry being put together here. These were just guys. And to Harry's defense, you just had to get a team on the floor like yesterday.
And in sports, KMOX is proud to announce that it will be the radio home of the Spirits of St. Louis ABA basketball team. General Manager Harry Weltman says...
One day, Harry Weltman turns to me and says, "Hey, Roger, we're getting all these tapes coming in here from all sorts of people who want to basically broadcast their games. You want to listen to them and tell me who you think is any good?" Well, and I pick up the phone and I call my college roommate. I think he was still working on his credit from Syracuse. I said, "You can't believe this, but I'm now working for the Spirits of St. Louis, and I've got a great opportunity for you." I said, "Do you have a tape?"
And the only tape I had, I was 22 years old, was a game I had done on the campus station at Syracuse between Syracuse and Rutgers. I took the tape and re-recorded it with the treble down and the bass up to make myself sound older and more authoritative. And then I sent it off to Roger.
And I get the tape, I listen to it, and it's Bob, at some level, doing Marv Albert, doing Bob Costas.
So he put the tape recorder on Harry Weltman's desk while Harry was out to lunch. And there was a box with a couple of hundred applicants in it. He pushed the box to the side, queued my tape up to the best sequence, and when Harry walked in the door before he could sit down behind his desk, he said, "Listen to this." And he pushed the button.
Brings it down the lane, lays it off left side. Jones stops and pops. Bang!
He stops, he pops, bang. And I stop it because there's nothing else to listen to. And I rewind it. "You want to hear it again, Harry?" "Oh, yeah, it's pretty good. Let me hear it again."
And about 2 days later, they called and said, "You got the job." They introduced me to Jack Buck, and his opening comment was, "I have ties older than you, kid."
St. Louis actually was an open market. The St. Louis Hawks of the NBA had moved to Atlanta. So here comes the Spirits of the ABA, and I think they just landed there because they happen to have a vacancy sign.
Professional basketball returns to St. Louis, and Memphis controls the top.
These kids were all extremely talented, but also very, very stubborn and very difficult to coach. Bobby Kennedy had his hands full.
Oh, we drove Bob crazy. We drove him crazy.
He didn't stand a chance, no. He would diagram plays in the huddle and tell us to go out and do one thing, and 50% of the time we would do it. The other 50%, somebody would take the ball and freelance.
Well, the young fellas, I think, will make rookie mistakes. This will hurt us a little bit probably early in the year, but we think the young talent should come along, and if it's young and good, why, it should be here for a while with us.
The veterans knew how to play, knew what it was going to take to win, and the rookies are saying, "Look, you had your time. This is our time. and you're yesterday's news.
They didn't pay any dues as rookies. The normal life for them was to demand playing time right away. If Marvin Barnes had come into the NBA and had spoken back to a veteran, he would have been put in his place immediately.
Marvin had his own set of rules. He was going to get to do what he wanted. The ownership was driven to make sure that this was Marvin's team.
My first 7, 8, 10 games in St. Louis, I was averaging 30-something points, 20-something rebounds a game. I remember saying to the owners, damn, I didn't know I was this good. I need more money.
One day out of the blue, he just disappeared. The team had no knowledge where he was. They, went to his house, couldn't find him.
He was gone. I mean, Bob McKinnon called in from the road, said, we haven't seen Marvin. He missed the flight. We don't know where he is. And for 10 days, he was missing.
The player that persuaded Marvin to leave the team was a veteran player named Pogo Joe Caldwell, a notorious clubhouse lawyer.
And Joe Caldwell looked at my contract, and he said that there were some things I needed in my contract, and I should walk off the team till they put it in there.
After about 5 days of being AWOL, a reporter in Dayton, Ohio, spotted him in a billiards parlor.
I guess some people might say that maybe Marvin is enjoying this, that he's having fun with the publicity.
No, I'm not having fun at all. This is strictly business. I want to play, but I can't play unless I'm insured and unless I have a lot of other things in my contract that I'm missing right now.
The things I wanted on my contract were legitimate. Like, I didn't have an injury clause in my contract. So I had a contract that if I got hurt, they wouldn't pay me.
Now he's stranded in Dayton, still on strike. His mother realized that Marvin was making a terrible mistake. So she got on the phone and called the Selma brothers.
And they told my mother that they would work my contract out with me. And of course, I'm my mama's boy, so I said, okay, I left.
I think when he came back, he was viewed as a loose cannon. He started missing practices, coming in late for practices.
After Marvin disappeared, they traded for me. I was a 9-year veteran at that time. I was brought in to kind of oversee things and be a keeper for Marvin Barnes, pick him up for practices, pick him up for games, making sure he was at the games and the practices on time.
I know the things that they can do in the professional game and the things that they cannot do, and I try my best to help them along this way. And
I remember he came in the locker room, he pulled me aside. He said, Marvin, I'm here to help you. I'm gonna make you a star, a superstar. He said, and I'm here to watch you, to keep you out of trouble.
Marvin Barnes would have been a guy you didn't know if he's going to be at practice or not. Didn't know if he's going to be at the game or not. You didn't know what you were going to get from him. Because Marvin Barnes didn't care about anybody but being on Marvin's timetable.
We were all in New York. We all had to get up at 5:30 to make the plane to get down to Norfolk. And they said, so where's Marvin? Oh, he said he didn't want to come.
Sure. So when I got up and I came to, I said, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. We got to get out of here and get to the airport.
And what he didn't realize was they only had so many commercial flights to Norfolk. He'd already missed the last one. Norfolk is done.
He chartered a plane from New York to Virginia. But back then, which was unheard of, nobody did that kind of stuff except movie stars.
When we land in Virginia, I changed into my uniform right there at that little airport we fly into. We race to the gym. On the way, we stop at McDonald's because I'm hungry.
Carrying all this McDonald's food into the arena, he spots Harry Weltman. And he goes up to Harry Weltman and he says, Harry, I got good news and bad news for you. Good news is the food is on me, and he hands Weltman a couple cheeseburgers and French fry and a soda. He says, the bad news is that you owe my pilot $1,500 for the plane ride, plus $25 for the cab ride.
The general manager is pissed off, but they gotta pay the pilot or I'm going to jail.
And Bob McKinnon, who is the coach, is in the locker room, and he's already kind of laying out a strategy without Marvin. People are going to move around, and Maurice Lucas is going to take on a different role. And the double doors swing open to the visitors' locker room, and there stands Marvin.
I got my mink coat on, big hat, I'm eating hamburgers.
And he parts the coat Superman style, and he's got his uniform on underneath. And with a broad smile, he declares,
have no fear. BB's here.
Bob McKinnon, the coach, is absolutely steaming. Threatens to bench him for the rest of the year. Doesn't start him. The Spirits are down by 20 late in the first quarter. And McKinnon yells down to the end of the bench where Marvin was sitting. And he says, get in there and earn your money for a change. And Marvin proceeded to just light the place up.
He winds up with something like 41 points and 19 rebounds.
For all the trouble that Marvin caused, all the distractions that he brought to the team, me, personally, I still wanted Marvin with me.
Knocked it away and made the steal. Now he's on the front end of the break. Behind the back to Marvin. Pretty play.
There were times when I'd be broadcasting games where Marvin Barnes at his best, or Maurice Lucas, the young Maurice Lucas, would be performing. Really quality players. And you'd look around the arena in St. Louis, and there'd be 1,500 people in this cavernous 19,000 seat arena. And there was definitely something wrong with this picture. And the tickets were $3, $5, and $7.
As Lewis slows it up in the backcourt, we have what is known as a sparse crowd.
The fun part of the entire thing in being in the marketing side of that business was, how do you pack a house that's got 18,000 seats, and how do you organize the seats so it at least looks like there's enough people there?
We used to have them all kind of promotions to try to get people in the stands.
We were always nervous about what kind of crowds we were going to have, and anything could help, we tried it.
There were always the classics, right? There was the, there's always the ball night and the T-shirt night, whatever, but there was always just, what else can you come up with, basically?
We had things like cow milking,
wrestling bear,
alligator wrestling,
Arlene, the hot dog eater.
Pizza night, burger night, score 125 points. Everybody in the building gets something free.
But we also were giving away balls for ball night. We only had 2,000 balls and 10,000 people showed.
And everyone began to realize they weren't going to get their ball. And the next thing I know, it's a riot on our hands. Everyone's jumping over the barriers, and the crowd began pulling the balls out from everywhere.
When the Nets and Dr. J came to town, we would have basically our largest crowds of the year.
When Dr. J came to town, everybody around the city was talking about Dr. J. I was a little upset, and Marvin was a little upset because they didn't care about the Spirits of St. Louis. All they cared about was seeing the doctor.
Every time Doc would come, I wrote a poem to get under Dr. J's skin. There once was a doctor named Irving whose slam dunks were especially unnerving. But when Marvin gets moving and the crowd gets to grooving, for the doctor a hospital bed they'll be reserving. It never worked. He'd come and kill us anyway.
Marvin was almost like a miniature Ali. He had such personality. We were entertained by him.
It was quoted around the country. And somebody said, well, what do you think you need to improve? And you said, well, I can't think of anything. I'm so good.
They just pick up anything I say and they write about it. It's all right with me. It's more news for me, more publicity. So
Marvin was irrepressible. And Marvin loved him some Marvin. I mean, there's no question that he got a tremendous kick out of himself, and he did not lack for self-confidence. And the truth is that there were many nights, even when Dr. J was in the game, when the best player on the floor was Marvin Barnes.
The owners loved him so much. I mean, the Silners let Marvin rule the roost. Marvin did what Marvin wanted to do, but Marvin was always forgiven. And you can't let that happen, expect that you're going to produce a winning team.
After we were losing quite a few games, the owners felt like we needed another seasoned veteran, a stabilizing force to go along with Marvin and Maurice. We acquired Don Adams, who was a seasoned vet, and Don was a tough guy.
Don Adams had been a good NBA player with the Detroit Pistons, and he was a mature presence. I'm sure he wondered just what kind of nuthouse he'd wandered into when he first entered the Spirits locker room.
Well, now we activated Don Adams, and we're playing San Antonio. San Antonio had this big center named Swen Nader, 6'11", burly guy.
Nader was a big guy, bigger than Marvin. And Marvin squares off with him.
And before he could throw a punch, Don Adams came flying off the bench.
And bam, crack,
bam, down goes Nader.
He cold cocks Nader.
He should still be laying there.
And as Marvin is standing over him, he goes, "Boy, are you lucky that I didn't hit you first."
In the ABA, it was like anything goes. We had a lot of fights on the court. Guys were touchy about their job because they weren't stable. You could be on one team one day and then you could be cut the next day. And these guys were fighting for their jobs on the court.
We went at each other. Nobody liked nobody when the game started.
If a fight would break out and you stayed on the bench, you were in big trouble.
You're playing the same team 12 times a year. And by about that 8th or 9th game, you could really be ready to punch him even before the opening tap.
It seemed like the fight changed the tone. It seemed like Adams' presence signified, look, it's one thing to have talent. This is not the way you do business, the way you guys have been doing business.
From that point on, we went on to win quite a few games.
The Spirits were starting to kind of figure it out, and everybody was kind of accepting of their roles and what it took to win games.
We won 8 of our last 12 games, and Marvin scored 50 points in 3 of the games.
Barnes from 20 and he hits it. Driscoll into Marvin and puts it up and in. Right side, Marvin. And the short jump, Marvin. Yes, Marvin Barnes is on fire.
I was playing fantastic, of course.
Jones off the dribble. He feeds to Marvin, who goes up in a crowd and hits.
I feel that we have delivered to the city of St. Louis what we promised. A very exciting club that would be competitive faster maybe than any new franchise in any sport in history.
We actually made the playoffs. This ragamuffin, put together from scratch team, but our first round opponent was the defending champion New York Nets.
Have a little champagne.
The Spirits, they were 26 full games behind the Nets in the standings. Had lost to them all 11 times by an average of 19 points a game.
We were a dominant team, and we were somewhat destined to win back-to-back. Spirits, they had as much talent as anybody, but they would just self-destruct in the fourth quarter.
We're not afraid of them. We don't fear any team. We consider the playoffs a brand new season, and we're coming out to play together and to win.
When we draw them in the playoffs, guys were just like, how in the world are we going to stand a chance to beat them? And I told them, if we play team basketball, we have a chance of beating the defending champs.
He said we was going to win the series. I thought he was crazy.
I mean, this was Dr. J and the defending champs. I mean, this was big.
Here's my idol in the flesh, and I was a nervous wreck.
First game in New York, we're up 18 points at halftime. They came running in the locker room like the game was over. I mean, they were yelling and screaming and celebrating. And we get in the locker room. I says, you know what? It's just halftime. We go right back out on the floor. And sure enough, we went into our old, way of playing.
Adams takes it back. Gives to Freddie Lewis. Knocked away by Taylor. Stolen by Evans. Here he goes on a solo, and he stops it.
They beat us the first game, and we all thought, oh, Lord, here we go again. Game 2, everybody stepped up their game. Dr. J got 6 points that game. The lowest he ever got in a playoff game in his career. We took it to him on their court. And when we beat him the first one, we got the taste of it. We gave him the business.
You've just got to be impressed with the way the Spirits of St. Louis came.
The fan reaction was great in St. Louis in the first 2 games. The people were coming out, white and black together. The people were excited, they were screaming, they were jumping, they was cheering. We had arrived.
The fourth game was the game that St. Louis really needed. And Marvin was monstrous in the game. He had 23 points, 20 rebounds, and 7 blocks.
Nobody could stop him. Nobody could stop him. He had his little turnaround, jump shot, and he could always run and jump. I mean, we knew that Marvin was an exceptional talent. I wanted my idol to take notice of me. I wanted him to see how far I had came that first year.
We beat them 2 straight at home, and we go back to New York, and we were just all, so excited about being up 3-1.
The difference between this Spirit team and the one we saw even up to a month ago is just startling.
We were down 9 points with 1 minute and 53 seconds to go in the game.
It looks like we're coming back to St. Louis. 107 to 106. 18 seconds to play in the game.
I'm thinking that this is going to be a really tough time for us because they're putting the ball in the best players' hands. My feeling was, let's double team Doc.
The ball hit off the leg of Irving on the inbound. A backcourt violation. A backcourt violation. And the ball belongs to St. Louis.
When we call the timeout and we go to the sidelines, Marvin says, I can take him. I can take him. Give me the ball. I can take him. And Coach McKinnon says, give the ball to Freddie and you guys get out of the way.
16 seconds to play in the game. The Spirits can take the lead with a basket here.
It was like a slow motion thing because I saw everything that was coming together. Brian Taylor was on me, and I looked like I was going to my left, and I crossed and went to my right.
With 8, with 7.
And I just went up in the air.
6, with 5, the jumper! He does it! With 3 seconds! No timeouts left! Melchiori hits it!
It was probably the greatest playoff upset in ABA history.
The call was accurate. It was a good call in that respect, but I just kind of lost it.
108 to 107, the final score!
This is, to that point, the adventure of a lifetime.
And I don't believe any of this. The series is over.
And it was just exhilarating. The whole thing was just exhilarating. Everyone was kind of whooping it up after the game, and there were the Silnas in the locker room spilling over into the celebration in the shower. And I remember Ozzie Silna said afterwards, look, we're losing money on this team. We hope to make money someday. If I can't have some fun, what the hell am I in it for?
The next series, after we move on from the Nets, was the Kentucky Colonels. We were feeling like, hey, if we could beat the Kentucky Colonels, we'll win a championship. We're going all the way.
Unfortunately, Freddie got hurt. And when Freddie went down, that basically was the end of the season.
When Freddie went down and was on crutches, we tried and we talked a good game, like we can overcome this, but realistically, there was no way we could.
Spirits lose badly. Out. But the way the season ended, when the Spirits unexpectedly beat the defending champion Nets, we all thought that this was the start of something big.
We're going to make this brief. I think we all know why we're here. We're naming a new head coach of the Spirits of St. Louis. I'm speaking of Rod Thorne, who was formerly assistant coach of the New York Nets.
With the tremendous young talent and with the veteran players that the Spirits have, I think undoubtedly that this should be the team of the future in professional basketball.
Rod came in, and the first thing he didn't like was Fly Williams. Rod and Fly clashed a lot, and Fly was let go.
I'm sure he wanted to put a little more discipline with the team. I don't think he handled the Marvin distractions, shall we say, and it bothered him and it frustrated him.
Rod Thorne wanted to trade me to Kentucky and keep Maurice.
Maurice Lucas has come in for Marvin Barnes, and this is Lucas with the ball up top, guarded by Tom Owens.
Maurice was much more dedicated to the game and worked harder than Marvin did at the time, and I think that frustrated Maurice.
And I remember him calling me in his office saying, Marvin, do you want to stay here or you want to go to Kentucky? And Maurice was in his office. And Maurice was saying that he couldn't play with me because he didn't know if I was going to show up and I was late coming to practice or whatever.
Had it been up to me, I would have traded Marvin rather than Lucas.
but it was, that wasn't up to me. That was it. The trade was ended up made by management.
And Marv said, well, what do you want to do, Marvin? I ain't going nowhere. Maurice, I'll see you later. Get him out of here. And they traded him to Kentucky.
Just after Maurice was traded, the ABA began to fall apart, if you will, as the management and the ownership in a variety of cities became, what began to go under. We began just absorbing players and absorbing players.
Utah folded, and the next day, they flew in Ron Boone and Mose Malone. And we had a chance to win it all with the talent we had on the team.
We had Don Chaney,
Randy Denton,
Caldwell Jones.
We had N.L. Carr.
We had some of the greatest players available in the game at that time coming on our team.
Freddie Lewis brings it back. It's in the lane to Malone, and Moses lays it in. Boone off the dribble to the baseline. He feeds to CJ, goes up in a crowd and hits.
It was very difficult when we got these players in.
Top of the key, M.L. Carr. Long jumper.
It felt like it was almost like an all-star team going out there and playing, everybody trying to do their own thing.
I get 24 a game. Moses get 20-something a game. I got 13, 14 rebounds. He got 12 rebounds.
We had so much talent, and we just couldn't put it together.
Spirits looking to break a three-game losing streak. Freddie way up high. In the lane for Moses. Backing on Lucas. They call him for steps.
We had a lot of guys that could play, but we couldn't beat anybody. We were just all over the place. People were just trying to get their numbers. We never became a team.
It was very hard at the end of the second season, knowing that we weren't going to make the playoffs, and we had all of this talent.
They didn't care about the game. They wondered where the next party was at. Who having this party tonight? Where that candy at? Where them girls at? We didn't care about the game. During my second year in the pros, I started using drugs. I had accomplished all my goals. I beat my idol. I made the All-Star team, Rookie of the Year. I felt like I owed myself a break.
We both like to do some of the same things, and which was, smoke marijuana and snort a couple lines of coke.
Back then, using cocaine wasn't nobody looked down on you. They didn't criticize you. They looked up at you like, you can afford that? Well, you must be rich.
Some of the players were blue-collar, lunch bucket type warriors. And the Flies and the Marvins were I just think they had many different things going on in their life other than basketball.
I got introduced to some drug traffickers, and I got real close with them. They became like my family. I was living my fantasy too. I always wanted to be a gangster, a drug dealer, a pimp, a player, a hustler. I was like, I'm gonna die young, I'm gonna die fast, I'm gonna die quick, and I'm gonna have fun, that's it. I was cut by the team, but I still stayed in the city. Flew back and forth from New York to St. Louis. Sometimes Marvin used to put me on a plane, because they needed their candy.
He would show up at different places, too. He would show up on the road sometimes where we were. He was around the team. I'm not quite sure what his role was.
I was the drug guy. I couldn't leave. I knew all the dealers and everybody in every city. Guys used to fly into St. Louis. It was crazy. They had to put their orders through me. And we bought an apartment and where we all would hang and party and have orgies and play cards, hang out.
There's been a lot of talk that he has been such a troublesome burden to this club. Is there any possibility that he will be dealt away by the Spirits in the near future?
I doubt that very much. We've never doubted his pride in his playing ability, nor his playing ability.
I don't know that anyone could have had control over this team. And, you know, Marvin was getting more and more out of hand.
Sometimes I would pick up some of the players, some of the greatest players in the game from other teams, all-star players, and I would pick them up in my Rolls Royce. And I would take them shopping, take them to the barbershop, take them to eat. And then later on that night, I would send hookers to the hotel rooms where they were and say, drain them. Have sex with them till they can't move. It never worked. The guys would end up getting 30 and 40 points. And then the girls would come by later after the game looking for money. I said, what do you want me to pay you for? The guy got 40 points. You didn't do it. I did what you told me to. I said, you did a terrible job.
Marvin Barnes was a bad guy because Marvin Barnes only cared about one person, Marvin Barnes. See, that's the thing about people like Marvin. My feeling is a big part of being a star is acting like a star, and that in some ways it's a cop-out by some of these guys who act a certain way off the court. It's almost so they don't have to really put out fully on the court and deal with the expectations of true greatness.
30 for 30, presented by Buick Encore.
Marvin Barnes is one of the most complex athletes I've ever encountered. What makes Marvin so compelling is that he's totally uncensored. He says what he thinks, and he really doesn't care about the ramifications. I understand Marvin's critics, but I actually found him to be extremely thoughtful and compelling.
I'm wondering, at this point in time, can the ABA exist without a merger in its future?
Well, I think it's going to be very difficult. But
when the season ended, I didn't expect the ABA to survive because it was dwindling down. We didn't have enough teams to play another ABA season.
The ABA is out of gas. Teams are folding. You're down to like 7 teams. And they just realize they have to get some of these teams into the NBA.
We knew that there was no tomorrow for the ABA as a separate entity, that we have to either merge or dissolve. The Silnas were hopeful that they could talk the NBA into taking them.
The NBA was having a meeting of its board of governors at Dumfries Hyannis Resort, a semi-motel, swimming pool, golf course kind of place.
The meetings were intense. I mean, there's no question about it. I remember saying to my wife on the phone, we're going to either make a deal or not. I'll be in basketball tomorrow or I won't be.
We were there for days. We were supposed to come up for 1 day, come back at night. I think we were there for 3. I had to send out for toothbrush and clean underwear and what have you.
David Stern was able to bring everybody together. He was a consensus builder. He knew that deep down that this was good for basketball. I remember David said, no, we're not going to get out of here unless we make a deal. I had no idea that they were going to insist upon 4 teams. We thought it would be 6. I did.
The 4 teams from the ABA that went into the NBA were the Denver Nuggets, the Indiana Pacers, the San Antonio Spurs, and the New York Nets. The critics all say it was because of Marvin's erratic play and his irresponsibility and the rumors of his drug use that the NBA did not want the Spirits included in the merger.
Barnes was not the reason
why the NBA owners didn't want a franchise there. They'd had a very successful NBA team in St. Louis. They'd won a world championship. Bob Pettit was a star on that team, but they couldn't make it, and they moved to Atlanta. The NBA owners did not want a team back in St. Louis.
They didn't think St. Louis was ready for NBA play. They didn't think they were financially stable. We then begin a series of negotiations to buy out Kentucky and St. Louis. Kentucky, you know, we got that done pretty quickly.
They were spurned lovers. We've been through the courtship, and we bought the diamond ring, and we've got a minister, and now we're at the altar, and you're telling us we can't get married.
The Sooners were not happy. They were very unhappy. They held out. We want to be part of the NBA. We want to be part of the NBA. We want to be part of the NBA.
The Spirit's owners, they wanted this adventure to continue. They wanted to leverage this into a place in the league. And when that couldn't happen, they devised their own plan.
The critical element was that they would have a piece of the television revenues for all of the 4 teams forever.
In other words, a 7th from Indiana, a 7th from San Antonio, a 7th from Denver, a 7th from the New York Nets. 4/7 of a full TV share in perpetuity, which means like forever. That was the key phrase, in perpetuity. They were smart enough to know that TV is where you wanted to be rather than a lump settlement.
We didn't know what television, we didn't know what cable was. We didn't know what was going to happen to the whole world of communication. Quite frankly, we weren't smart enough, I guess, to be as visionary as those guys were.
Part of their thought was, look, this keeps us connected to the league. This is our entry point. Maybe through this connection, they haven't closed the door on us, maybe through this, we'll get a franchise.
We're going to have kind of a vested interest in this situation so that perhaps one day we're going to come into the NBA, because that was the dream of these guys.
I think if you had said to the Sooners, you can have this deal going forward, or you can have a franchise, they would have taken the franchise.
I think the other owners on the NBA side thought this was a joke. There were no NBA TV revenues at that point in time. They couldn't imagine them being what they are today.
I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that hundreds of millions of dollars have flowed from the 4 teams into the coffers of the Spirits of St. Louis over the years.
They have what I believe is the greatest settlement in all of professional sports history.
It's like hitting megabucks. Only they didn't just hit megabucks once, they hit it every year when those checks show up.
Every time we are reminded of it, it just laugh. It's because it's so out there. It's so apart from anything else that exists in professional sports.
Not only was it, this is the best deal ever in the history of sports, the best business deal, but I would safely say maybe the best deal in the history of business.
Where's Donald?
Donald's right here. Hey, Don, sure. How are you? What's up? How are you?
The ball. That was a heck of a game.
At the 30th reunion, the Spirits of St. Louis had the ultimate last laugh. The Sooners distributed hats to anybody and everyone who wanted to have them. And those hats basically said something very clear. They said Spirits of St. Louis in the front, on the back, in spirit, in perpetuity. The Spirits of St. Louis will live on forever.
After the merger, I played with 4 NBA teams in 4 years. Marvin was never the same player. He
By then, he was a full-time addict.
When I was with the Celtics, I did drugs on the bench, and I did drugs in the locker room. I did drugs before the game, after the game, during the game. I was just a shell of myself.
He had lost all his skills. I've never seen a guy lose so much sound so fast.
We totally derailed. We stopped ourselves. We destroyed ourselves.
He spent a lot of his time on the streets, homeless.
I got in trouble with the law because I wasn't thinking straight. I was on a slow march to death. I was slowly killing myself. I'd have been a whole lot of things if drugs and alcohol didn't change my path in life.
Marvin, unquestionably, had he stayed anywhere near the straight and narrow, would have been among the 50 greatest players. He was just supremely talented.
That's what life's about. Can't take something back that already happened. My life has been a roller coaster, man. I mean, me and myself to fly, I've been through hell. I've been shot, been to jail, never left the drugs alone until I had episodes in my life that brought me back down to earth.
I hit rock bottom in May of '93. That's when I tried to take my own life in a failed suicide attempt where my car ran out of gas when I was trying to let the fumes kill me because I spent all my money on alcohol and drugs. I know there were a lot of people saying, well, they were just a bunch of drug addicts and they were this, but we also had some classy people on our team. And we also were a great bunch of guys. We never hurt anybody but ourselves.
You got to remember the Spirits have only a 2-year existence. That's maybe 20 guys in total that were ever Spirits. So it's a small club. And they were all Ozzie and Danny and Donald and Harry's guys.
Ozzie has been one of the best human beings I ever met in my life. Ozzie Silner has been my father for 15 to 20 years. Ozzie Silner has never abandoned me through all my trials and tribulations. I visited the dark side. It's not fun on the dark side. I like it in the light.
The legacy of the Spirit should be failed greatness.
Exemplified everything that is right about sports and everything that's wrong about sports.
Marvin Barnes and the Spirits didn't play by the old rules. They seem to be dedicated to the proposition that there is absolutely no reason why, in the pursuit of winning a basketball game, you can't have a little fun along the way.
There'll never be anything like it. You just have to be there to know how simultaneously crazy, stupid, infuriating, but so much fun, so exhilarating. It was just a great, great time. For whatever its flaws may have been, we will always primarily remember it with a smile.